Good day, Professor Edolsa, and to my fellow students. We were tasked to analyze a specific concept from one of this week's lessons, namely unemployment, measuring the cost of living and the nation's income. Among the suggested topics, I chose to research cost of living. Modern economies expect inflation. Price changes are caused by changes in supply and demand. Inflation occurs when the average price rises. Inflation means that you'll have to pay more for the same item. How much does price change in reality? Prices have more than doubled in the last 30 years. As you can see, today's $5 bills can have lesser value in the next 10 years, which may appear to be a long time. During this time, wages can grow faster than prices. Inflation doesn't always mean bad news. Now that we know what inflation is, how do we relate the cost of living? Living expenses are some of basic expenses such as housing, food, taxes, and medical fees. Wages set the living cost. Salary calculates the cost of living in a given area. It lowers purchasing power and thus living standards. Inflation affects many retirees on peak incomes. Let's start with America. The Consumer Price Index is the most commonly used indicator in the US, or the CPI. For the CPI, the Bureau of Labor Statistics uses the price of a fixed basket of goods and services for an average family of four. The CPI tracks changes in living costs. However, the CPI is not a reliable indicator of the cost of living. The three indicator issues are well known but difficult to solve. The issues are alternative, quality, and new product biases. As price rises, consumers reduce purchases and look for alternatives. People tend to buy more when a product's price drops. Items that generally increase in price tend to lose importance over time, whereas items that decrease in price gain importance. This indicates a bias. Assume that customers buy the same item regardless of price changes. This is a wild assumption. As a result, substitution bias overestimates the customer's actual cost of living by ignoring those who can substitute for goods whose relative prices have risen. Concerns about using fixed goods or baskets to calculate inflation includes the emergence of improved or new commodities. New products from non-existing to existing can be considered superior in quality. Commodity baskets that have been modified in the past do not contain new products. The CPI baskets of goods and services will be updated as new products are added, but this takes time. The most accurate inflation meter is used the GDP deflator to accurately measure inflation. However, because it includes prices of many items outside the household, it is not a good indicator of living costs, such as airplanes, fire trucks, factory buildings, office buildings, bulldozers, and many more. As a result, CPI is used to measure as it also measures goods and services brought by households. The cost of living is frequently used to compare living expenses in cities. Living expenses can be significantly impact personal wealth. High salaries may appear insufficient in high-value cities, while low wages may appear higher in low-spending cities. The highest level expenses were found in Tokyo, Moscow, Hong Kong, and New York City. The Cost of Living Index compares living expenses in urban and suburban areas. This index can be used to calculate the cost of basic necessities like food, housing, clothing, transportation, medical, and other goods and services. Workers and job seekers such as college graduates are considering relocation because what appears to be a higher salary may not be due to regional price differences. In the article I've read, the highest cost of living in 2016 is in San Francisco. San Francisco rents are roughly 3% higher than New York, while food prices are roughly 43% lower in Nevada. To summarize, economists believe using the CPI to measure cost of living is flawed. It has a subtle problem, but still the data is important because it shows changes in the average retail of fixed goods and services. The CPI is also used to adjust wages, pensions, and severance pay.